I'm excited to introduce our very first speaker. She is the 50th Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Indiana, and we are appreciative of having you host us today. Sue Ellspermann manages 6 state agencies. She serves as the president of the Indiana Senate and chairs the Indiana Counterterrorism and Security Council, which, as we know, is becoming more and more important and relevant. So please give a warm welcome to Lieutenant Governor Sue Ellspermann.
Okay, like a lot of you women out there deciding, do I need my glasses or not? Are they up or down? Are they not a pain when you get over 40 and all of a sudden join me in reminiscing on what it was like before when you did glasses? But I think I'm putting them on, otherwise I won't know what I'm saying. So it's just a pleasure to be here at the opening of your Smart Girls Summit. And first of all, I just have to say, I love the name Smart Girls. I'm the mother of daughters, and I love that it's cool to be smart. That's so important for all of us, and I know that there's much more behind that. But you know, there's so many ways we women shoot ourselves in the foot over terminology, and you've got some good terminology. And I thank you for your engagement in the public policy arena. We need more women engaged more actively. In fact, I'm even more adamant that it's women who are going to bring the answer to our needs for better solutions and better governance in our public service arenas. And the fact that you are conservative women makes your leadership all the more critical. So let me tell you, I'll tell you just a little bit about my story. Just a couple of people in the room probably know a little bit more of it. But 5 years ago, if you said I would be up here, I would tell you you're crazy, you grew 2 heads, something's wrong. I had not run for anything since high school student council. I'm an engineer by degree, in fact by 3 degrees. Came out of large corporations, went to work for the big companies. If you told me I might be CEO someday, I might have agreed with you. But then I went into owning my own business for 20 years, problem solving, strategic planning. Finished a PhD, went back to work in a university, did outreach activities there, really engaging with the community, with business and industry and nonprofits on how to make them more effective and how to do better problem solving, better economic development in our arena. And then I did a project for the Lieutenant Governor of Indiana, and it happened to be to help do the strategic plan for rural Indiana. Now, how many of you, just out of curiosity, come from small towns somewhere along the way? Raise your hands. You will know this. This is not a surprise to you. I'd already seen it in my part of southern Indiana, where we had begun to shrink. Our main streets were no longer like they were when we were growing up. Our schools were smaller than they used to be. They weren't those idyllic kinds of communities, the Mayberry RFDs that I recalled, and they just, there was lots of room for improvement. Well, when I did that project for the Lieutenant Governor, I discovered, oh my goodness, it wasn't just my area of the state, it was the entire state. And so I knew I had this inside drive that said I needed to get more engaged in public service, public engagement somehow. And in Indiana, for conservative women, we have a program called the Lugar Series. I don't know if anyone's heard of it, but it really is to teach women, bring good best practices of local, state, and federal governance to women. And the fact is, not nearly enough women run. And we knew this 20 years ago. That's when the program began. So the Lugar Series in Indiana is a very strong, now over 400 women having graduated from this program, preparing you on what good public service ought to look like. We end up the program spending a week in Washington, D.C., really going behind the scenes, how policy is done. And at the end of that year-long process, I was approached to run for office for the State House, for the State Senate first, and then State Representative. And each time I'd say, oh no, I haven't run for anything since high school student council. Surely you don't want me to do that. But then I agreed to think about it, spent the summer really thinking more deeply about it, and by the end of the summer, made the decision that, you know what, if not me, then who? And I think in this room, there's probably a lot of those people I always believe that if you're not willing to get off the sidelines, you're not allowed to complain about the problem. So for me, yes, you get that. So, you know, it's time to jump in there. So I have to tell you, though, what race they gave me to run. It was taking on the House Majority Leader, number 2 House, in that case, Democrat, from my area of the state. Probably had somewhere between 0 and 5% chance of winning, but luckily I was too naive to know. In addition, when we made that decision, of course, you put the strongest team you can together, and that would be, and I think she's in the room, in the back of the room, my chief of staff today was my campaign manager. Tanya Brothers-Bridge, would you raise your hand? You know, always pick a good woman to be your teammate, and she was fabulous. But we made a decision early in the campaign, and our earliest decision was, if I was going to run, it was going to be on our terms. It would be a clean race, meaning no mudslinging. It would be honoring Hoosiers. It would be talking about the issues and what was important and how would we move the state forward. So we did that. Now, 2 weeks before the race, the vote, we were still 10 points down in the polls. And I was prepared to lose on election day because we had stuck by our 10 commandments. In fact, our 10th commandment was that at the end of the race, the day after the election, we would be proud of the race we ran, win or lose. And so I was perfectly content that we had done our best job. We had told people who we were. We had shared our policies, how we would govern, what was important, what I had done, so they knew who I was. Now, my party wasn't quite as thrilled with that approach. They thought there should have been some contrasting, and there should have been some differentiating. But at the end of the day, guess what? We won 52-48 for the biggest upset in the state. I share that story because much of what I see happening in politics, Democrat, Republican, Independent, is just that we're expected as women to run like men. And I don't think that's the best way to run. And let me just talk a little bit more about what we've done since then, and then I'll come back to some of those closing remarks because I have marching orders for each of you if you will take them on. You know, so since that time, I served just 2 years as state representative. In that time, served as vice chair of labor. I served on the Commerce Committee. Of course, I have a strong background in economic development, and the Elections and Reapportionment Committee. In my second year, Indiana took on a big project, and as conservatives as you are, you know how important the business climate is. We took on right to work in Indiana. Now, most people, when I told my House Speaker that I wanted to be on the Labor Committee, said, "Oh no, why would you want to do that?" And I said, because it's so incredibly important. And by the way, being an engineer, I've worked for 3 different manufacturing companies, been out on the shop floor, understand, and I've worked in right to work states, both in South Carolina and Texas. So I understood the benefits that were to be derived and how important it was for people to have those choices and what that did in competitiveness for the industry. So we took that on. I had lots of protesting, a few threats along the way. We won that, and Indiana, more importantly, won, because we are now rated as the best place to do business in the Midwest, and number 2 by site selectors in the country. And much of that goes with that fiscally conservative nature. It's making sure we have the business practices that ensure our economy can thrive. So no one was more surprised than me 18 months ago when I got a call from then candidate Pence's office to say there was a short list of candidates, and I was on it, and did I want to be considered for lieutenant governor? And I have to tell you the honest truth. After I said, sure, let me talk to my husband and I'll pray about it, when I hung up the phone, I got on the computer and Googled to make sure that that person who called me was actually with the Pence campaign. Because who would call a 2-year legislator and invite them to be lieutenant governor? So I'm here. We have focused on job creation and retaining the good fiscally sound policies that are important to the state. We have an honestly balanced budget, lower taxes, economic development, career and technical education, increased educational choice, and a moratorium on new regulations in the state of Indiana. I mean, we are doing the things that really make sure that the future of this state, for our businesses, but most importantly for our families and the next generation, for my daughters for your children as you're in your states, you know that that's just incredibly important. It was mentioned that I preside over the Senate. I serve as Secretary of Agriculture and Secretary of Rural Affairs. And it's that rural affairs part that goes back to that original project with Lieutenant Governor's office a number of years ago, which is why I'm here. I chair the Counterterrorism Task Force and then those 6 agencies you heard. My focus is really twofold. First, I think we need to focus on problem solving effectively. That means minimizing the political interference and engaging various perspectives in our solution building. For example, I'll share that today we just finished the 34th county on my 92 county tour. We go in and meet in every county with the elected officials in one setting, and then with business and agriculture in another, and hear what's working, what's not working. And the third question, how can the state be a better partner to you? And those answers are going to come from all sides of the aisle, from all perspectives, from big business, from small business. So we're hearing that, and I think that's what we need to be doing in our states. We also are demonstrating conservative values by keeping government lean. And if you know anything about Indiana, we are one of the leanest state governments in the country. But it's not only spending the fewest dollars on government, it's doing it well. And so as an industrial engineer, I believe in lean. You know, how do you make processes lean so you get high quality, great efficiency out of that, but also customer service for those Hoosiers so they're getting the greatest value out of that taxpayer investment. So ladies, now I'm going to ask you to oblige me into sharing some learnings and what I see as your challenge being here. First, we desperately need more women in our state house, our White House, and Congress. Women are great problem solvers. We're great multitaskers, and we're able to see various points of view. Further, we're the finest of consensus builders. So you also know, if you give it to a woman, the task will get done. Second, I believe women have a higher bar for our behavior. My motto during my campaign and as an elected official has been, if I wouldn't want my daughters to do it, I shouldn't do it. Now, I think we all know in this room that sometimes that hasn't been the example in Washington and other places. We need to set that higher bar. And third, I firmly believe that women will win races if they use their own branding approach, our best branding approach, which is tell them who you are, what you've done, and what you plan to do. Most importantly, be authentic to who you are, not what someone says you should be, but who you are. Stay on the high road. By that I mean no mudslinging, because once you give up the high road, you can't get it back. And finally, remember you're the CEO of your campaign, your job, your position, not the party, not a political consultant. It is okay to say no. So in closing, let me say, I believe that when elected, this new brand of conservative women legislator or chief executive will set a new standard for problem solving and political civility, two behaviors that are sorely lacking. Now, I know that the smart girls here don't formally endorse a party, and some of you in the room may consider yourselves independents because you're dissatisfied with the Republican Party. What I can tell you this is I will tell you the Republican Party needs you more than they needs you more than you need them. You will help stretch the umbrella. You will help make us stronger and create stronger leadership in the party. You will help us focus on solving the right problems rather than just winning seats. So I just mentioned that next month I will be traveling to Nashville to help the National Republican State Leadership Committee launch Right Women Right Now, which will recruit 300 women to run for state and national office. There may be a number of those strong women in this room right now. If you're here, I invite you to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to you personally. But let me tell you just what the research shows. The research shows that when asked, women will run. When women run, they will win statistically as often as men. After election, and I have one of those state representatives from Indiana in the room, they will work harder. They will introduce more legislation, and they will bring more authors, co-authors into their legislation, showing their hard work and their collaboration. So I want you to know, we collectively in this room are a big part of the solution to what ails politics right now. It is my hope and my prayer that you will consider public service in your future, and when you are asked, say yes. Now, it is my privilege. You're going to get to see a great video from one of the finest men I know, the governor of Indiana, Mike Pence, who many of you may remember from his days as congressman, Mike Pence, one of the true great governors of the state of Indiana, and I hope you will join me now as we hear from Governor Pence. Thank you.